It's game day for the Arizona Coyotes. They face off against the Vancouver Canucks alongside Oliver Ekman-Larsson and Conor Garland. We're going to talk about that. Plus, we're going to see a new person between the pipes for Arizona. That is also on today's episode of Locked On Coyotes.
You're Locked On Coyotes, your daily podcast on the Arizona Coyotes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the show, everybody. I'm Robyn Leonio. That is Kyle Pavlik on this episode of Locked On Coyotes. I want to thank everyone for making Locked On Coyotes your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms. We also want to get a huge thanks to Matthew Marshall for joining us on yesterday's episode for talking about the Arizona Legacy Pride Hockey Association. Talk about, again, the Arizona's first LGBTQ plus league in the state. It's awesome to have a discussion about growing the game in different communities.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Plus, Alpha is just a great abbreviation. So
I know, I love
to
it.
them for sweeping that up.
I know. I'm sure then that when they were discussing it, they're like, "Ooh, what about that?" I'm like,
yeah, and it works well. Like you will see like names stretch to kind of fit, but that one, it seems to be a pretty good one. So kudos to them. They're doing great things.
Absolutely. But once again, I just want to thank him for coming on. It was an absolute great conversation. If you missed it, go ahead and tune to yesterday's episode as well. It is available everywhere you get your podcast. It's also on YouTube if you want to see the video version of it. But let's move on to today's episode because we have a game today. Arizona Coyotes and Vancouver Canucks. Obviously, they played each other once already, but now once again up against two former players who were pretty prominent last year.
Mm-hmm. It's weird because like the Coyotes are going to be playing the Canucks like 2 times in a week, and it seems like it's been forever since we last saw them. So, like the whole like shifting divisions plus just this season in general has been like feels very compacted due to everything that happened.
Yeah, it does, and it's but I think it's nice to have that kind of thing. Obviously, it does suck to have to not see Pacific Division teams as much because again, that's where the Coyotes, fostered some big rivalries, with LA and Anaheim and San Jose and like, but
Yeah, I mean Vancouver not one of those rivals though. So
it's the California teams
yeah, mostly the California teams, and Vegas, of course.
and Vegas, and yeah, instead of seeing them 6 to 8 times a year, it's now like 3 times a year.
Yeah. But I mean, at least we don't have to see too many of our old friends, Conor, Garland, and Oliver Ekman-Larsson. We know, especially after that Chicago game, former Coyotes love to score against the Coyotes this year.
Yeah, I think it's just I think that's also a testament of the kind of players the Coyotes put out, right? They put out some solid players, and in a rebuild, it's like, all right, let's see what happens.
Yeah, it's definitely like the Coyotes. It's weird because I think we're gonna look back on the sell off like in a couple years and kind of see like was that really deserved? Like look at how X, Y, and Z players have taken steps forward, but I think there's also a couple players who have taken maybe steps back. Conor Garland, something that we were talking about, hasn't necessarily had the best season with the Canucks. He's in a much different role, so that's gonna make things harder. But only 14 goals, 23 assists in 66 games. He had more assists than that in 49 games with the Coyotes last year. So that kind of says something.
Yeah, he was a superstar last year. Let's
Yeah.
put it that. And this year for the Canucks is not as highlighted, not as a lot of us would have anticipated. Again, like you were saying, it's a different role. But what is interesting is the fact that the highlight of the two players that moved over, you thought it was going to be Garland, but all of Ekman-Larsson's actually proved to be better in a way.
Yeah, yeah. I don't want to say better, and I do think that OEL's contract is still ridiculously
Oh
high,
yeah.
so he is still an overpaid player. But like for a defenseman, like he's got 4 goals, 19 assists. He's a +3. If that's something that you kind of take into account, you probably shouldn't, but it's there.
I mean, let's
Uh,
remember he is a puck moving defenseman. That's kind of his job, right?
yeah, yeah, and it's respectable. I would say like. And I think that, there was different expectations for the two players. I do think that, Vancouver fans thought they were going to get a superstar in Conor Garland, and taking on OEL's cap hit and giving up the first round pick was, the necessary cost for that. And I do kind of wonder, like, would you rather, if you're a Vancouver Canucks fan, especially with the way the season's going, would you rather have Dylan Guenther than Conor Garland moving forward? And that's going to be an interesting question in the next couple of years.
It will be, because we'll see how Dylan Guenther grows. I think the Oil Kings are getting ready for uh, postseason for the WHL. I think
Yeah.
that's coming up in just a little bit.
We
So
have seen a lot of Dylan Guenther highlights this year, and that's a future project, and there's not a guarantee he's going to make the transition successfully to the NHL, but it's
he's a
seems
top 10 pick, though. So we're
really hope so.
yeah, we're really
Yeah,
hoping so.
yeah,
Obviously, one of our top 10 picks in the last decade didn't go as well.
yeah.
um, and that was a player who scored against Arizona in the Chicago game. But
Yeah, although like Strom is definitely like it's taken him a little while, but he seems to be finding this game. He hit 20, which is, I mean, did you expect Dylan Strom to have 20 goals this year?
no, but at the same time, like that's something that you'd hope to have expected from thir-
Third
a
over.
a third overall pick 5 years ago.
Yeah, yeah. This is true. I've said it before. I'll probably say it again. Getting drafted third overall may have been like a very big hindrance to Dylan Strom's career.
Because it was expectations too high.
Yeah. And he seems to have been like, dealing with those expectations his entire NHL career. Like, why isn't he doing everything faster? And it doesn't necessarily matter that he's gotten to the point where he needs to be. Like you said, there's an expectation that he should have been there a couple years ago.
Yeah, exactly. But it'll be interesting to see these two players, right? To
Yep.
see who like how they perform, right? Because as we were saying, former players tend to have like marquee games against the Coyotes.
Yeah. We just need, Jay Beagle to have a great game against the Canucks and Louis Eriksson just to even things out.
Yeah, but are they?
Erickson occasionally will do some things. They're like, well, I'm pretty impressed. Beagle probably less so. His most recent contribution to hockey was the fight that we talked about. So he's not really lighting the lamp too much.
Yeah. I just hope he doesn't go try to punch someone else in the face.
Yeah, that would definitely be not ideal unless they start punching him first. It's still
If they put
hockey.
or if they follow the code, right?
Yeah,
you go with mutual fight.
sure.
Those are
Yeah,
better. Those
yeah.
are better. Anyways, though, we still got more to get to on this episode of Lockdown Coyotes. We're going to talk about some goaltender news, plus we're going to make some predictions for this game coming up tonight. That coming up in just a moment, but first, a quick word from Carl.
BetOnline.net is your number one source for all your betting needs and sports information. You can find all the latest sports development, including this week's Masters Championship, odds, podcasts, and reviews for all the different leagues this season. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sports wagering information, including live betting, esports, and scores. It's the reason why we here at Locked On Coyotes always like to go to BetOnline when we're previewing games, like we will in the third segment. You can head over to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action. Bet online, where the game starts.
So let's continue this episode of Locked On Coyotes, previewing the Arizona Coyotes versus the Vancouver Canucks, set for 7 p.m. at Gila River Arena. Arizona Coyotes have confirmed. We have a confirmed goaltending start for today.
Mm-hmm.
We have Harri Säteri.
Yep. And I did look up last night pronunciation for his name. He's got the double dots over the A in his last name. Makes it an E sound, which is fun. Definitely an interesting goaltender. I am curious to see what he can do.
It will be interesting. I think this is his third shot into the NHL. Like, he's got drafted by an NHL team, and then he got shipped overseas, and did development somewhere else, and then came back again, and then development somewhere else, and then now is back again.
Yeah. If you are unfamiliar with the story of Säteri, which I imagine a lot of people out there are, Finnish goaltender, originally drafted 106th overall in 2008 by the San Jose Sharks, your hometown team. Mostly played in the AHL with Worcester and the Sharks, and has made a couple of journeys over to the KHL, but he made his NHL debut 2017-2018 season with the Florida Panthers, had 9 games, 292 goals against average, 911 save percentage, kind of respectable. Spent another half season in the AHL with the Grand Rapid Griffins, went back to the KHL, and got really big recently, winning gold for Finland at the Olympics, which of course there were not NHL players at, so caveat. He had a 1 goals against average, 962 save percentage in 5 games. Claimed by the Coyotes off of waivers after he originally signed with the Toronto Maple Leafs. So that's kind of his story.
And that's a long story, like a long journey to get back to the NHL, right?
Yeah, he is 32. I'm not sure if I said that. So he has lived a life. Craig Morgan of PHNX had a really good kind of article breaking down and talking to him about everything that's been going on. I highly recommend giving that a read if you haven't already.
I mean, Craig Morgan just explains everything super well. So,
and you need it. It's a long journey to go from being drafted by the Sharks to making your NHL debut a decade later with the Panthers. And there's a lot of ups and downs with that. And honestly, there's a chance he could have stayed in the KHL if Russia decided to not invade a country, because that was a big thing that happened that led to, I think we're going to see a lot more KHL players making the jump to the NHL in the next coming months.
Absolutely. What's make things interesting is we're going to see some waivers then, right? Because what happened with this one is, for those who are unaware, when a player gets imported from Europe, when you sign a contract from a European country to the NHL, that player has to clear waivers.
Yeah.
Because they consider return waivers, right? Returning from overseas.
I believe so. Waivers are always very weird, and the language regarding them can be a bit esoteric. It's definitely one of the more interesting carryovers from the NHL, but I do believe that yes, return waivers, and it's a thing, and you fans should like be prepared for it because I saw a lot of Toronto Maple Leafs fans very upset by this move and the fact that he had to clear waivers, and it's like, yeah, everyone goes into this process knowing this. Why are you surprised?
Yeah, I think they were just shocked at the fact that he they waived a goaltender, and then when they signed a goaltender and waived them, and then the one that they wanted gets taken away.
Yeah.
I mean, I think they should have gone in knowing the fact that there are other teams who are, you know, potentially looking for that. I think they probably didn't expect the Wedgwood trade at the same time, so then it kind of, you know, it crossed over. So it was just bad timing for the Toronto Maple Leafs.
I mean, the PHNX article I referenced mentioned, I think, that like 5 teams were like placed like claims on him. So there was no way that he was going to Toronto. Like someone else would have claimed him if not for the Coyotes.
It's just
So
because of the Coyotes are the worst team in the
yeah,
league.
the
They
Coyotes are the
got
worst team. They need goaltending, so it makes sense that they would get him.
waiver priority is waiver reverse standings, if everyone, by the way.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, definitely. And an interesting pickup. He hasn't had too much time to practice with the team. He's gotten a couple days in since the Coyotes haven't played, for most of this week. But it's also like, it's hard to make that jump from international play to the NHL. We've seen, Vamelka do really well. Who's to say that Säteri can't follow suit?
yeah, absolutely. And I think I hope so, because I always hope that, a player who is trying to get a shot back into the league and, after playing so many years in Europe gets, you know, gets to prove himself.
Yeah. And we've said it all season. The Coyotes are definitely a team that you want to be on if you're looking to prove something because they absolutely will give you the opportunity if you earn it.
And look at that. He is getting his first start
Yep.
on the Arizona Coyotes tonight against the Vancouver Canucks.
Yep.
It'll be interesting.
Should definitely an interesting one. And it it makes it a little bit of a question mark too, because who really knows how he's going to play in the NHL?
Yeah, because the sample size is pretty small.
Small in
It's
the
not,
NHL, and then what? Some people have probably watched him in the Olympics, but that is also a very small sample size against a very different quality of competition.
plus international hockey in itself is also very much different than the North American game.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Different ice size, very slightly. I think about 15 feet more wider than the international.
Yeah, I think something like that. I am not great with measurements, so I can never remember. But yes,
Yeah. So there's a lot more to it. There's definitely a lot more to it. Anyways, though, we still got more to get to, though. On this episode of Lockdown Coyotes, we are going to get to our predictions for the game in just a moment. But first, a quick word from our sponsors. And we're back here on Lockdown Coyotes. Once again, Robyn Leonyu and Carl Pavlik. Arizona Coyotes versus Vancouver Canucks tonight at 7 p.m. at Gila River Arena. We got our picks of the game ready for you guys. We have the odds, courtesy of our friends of BetOnline. We're going to take a look at what those odds are. Arizona Coyotes 1.5 underdogs at minus 155 plus 157 on the money line. Total points set at 6.
this is an interesting one, and I am not sure how well the Coyotes are going to do. The Vancouver Canucks did play last night. They were in Vegas. They beat the Golden Knights 5-1, which, an impressive win. uh, against a team that's better than the Coyotes. So I don't have high hopes. I think this one's going to be 4-1 Vancouver.
4-1 Vancouver. So under and give the points to Vancouver.
Yeah.
I am going to agree with you, although I think it's going to be a little more um, low scoring in that sense. I think it's
Okay.
going to be uh, 3-1
3-1.
Vancouver.
Yeah, like the Coyotes, they just don't really have the offense right now.
Especially, yeah, these last few games have been god awful.
Yeah, which it's something that you kind of we should expect. Lawson Krause, Clayton Keller, two of the biggest contributors offensively for the Coyotes. Jacob Chikrin, one of their best offensive defensemen. Like you're missing all these key players, so it's going to be hard to score goals.
It is going to be hard to score goals, but this makes it a little more depressing in ways, right? Because the beginning of last month, we were talking about the Coyotes at one point being the hottest team in the NHL because they were scoring and scoring and scoring and just going on this winning streak, including sweeping of all of Eastern Canada. It was like
Yeah.
we're having a blast during that time.
Yeah, and I think we all kind of knew that it was going to come to an end.
Oh yeah.
Like the team was going to regress, but I don't think anyone expected them to also have to deal with the injuries that they've had, which is just an extra thing on top of it.
Yeah. If there wasn't the injuries and they just regressed that way, my joke would have been is like, I think they just remembered that they're in the shame for shame sweepstakes and they need to lose.
Yeah. And I mean, I do like the idea of Säteri. Like, I hope he like plays really well. I hope he gets a few good looks throughout the season. But it's his first NHL game. He's hardly practiced with the team. The team's not good in general, so I could see him giving up a lot tonight.
And remember this. I mean, obviously, the first two goaltenders for the Arizona Coyotes in Carter Hutton and Karel Vejmelka both did not start. So Vejmelka had a slightly better start, but Hutton was absolutely god awful.
Yeah,
And that's why when he got injured, they just picked up Wedgwood and let Hutton just stay on the injured reserve. And it's like, we'll just take care of you when you're whatever.
yeah,
But Wedgwood had a good, like, obviously, because he started this season with another team, kind of got his bearings a little bit. But if you look at, again, the way Hutton started, the way Vejmelka started the season, let's see how it might go work with Säteri and see what.
yeah. And I mean, it is kind of important to point out that Säteri does have like he has been playing, he has been practicing,
Mm-hmm.
and international competition. So I don't want to say that he's been like just
No, he hasn't just been sitting around. No,
yeah,
absolutely not. I mean, again, he won a gold medal for God's sake. Like, but
yeah,
um, but again, as I said before, the international game and the North American game, they're very different beasts. So
very different. Yeah, and it takes time to adjust, especially for a goaltender whose job is all about like the angles and knowing where players are going to do, and hopefully you can remember about the trapezoid because that is definitely another part
yeah.
that's you know a key thing that we don't necessarily talk about too much when it comes to other players.
And not only that, and as I mentioned in the previous segment, being with the size of the ice being slightly different, and that's mainly the width of it. In North America, it is more narrow, which means less space for the players, which means more crowd, which means higher chance of screening. You might not be able to catch where pucks coming. I mean, again, that should like a professional goaltender should be able to adjust to that pretty easily, but you know it
It's
happens.
yeah, it happens. It's something that he should be able to account for, but it's going to take a little bit of time. The only way you could really do it is by playing games.
Absolutely. Anyways, though, we have our picks. You say 4-1. I say 3-1. That's going to be what we say are the picks for this game for the Arizona Coyotes versus Vancouver Canucks. be sure to check it out. Again, it is for tonight at 7 p.m. Anyways, though, that is it for today's episode. Hope you guys like what you heard. If you did, don't forget to leave a review, like, comment, subscribe if you yet to already. We're available everywhere you get your podcast, including on YouTube. Don't forget to interact with us on social media. We're on Facebook, facebook.com/LockedOnCoyotes, on Instagram at LockedOnCoyotes, on Twitter at LO_Coyotes. I'm personally at Robyn_Leano. Carl Pavlik is at Carl Pavlik FFH. You can follow us, interact with us, ask us a question you might have. We might answer them right away or on a future episode of the Locked On Coyotes podcast. Thanks again, everyone, for listening to today's episode. Hope you guys are staying safe out there. Hope you guys are staying healthy. And don't forget to howl on.